Welcome back to the Chad Hasty Show on News Talk 95.1 FM and 790 AM KFYO. Joining me on the phones right now with the Regulatory Transparency Project is Roger Clegg. He's the president and general counsel of the Center for Equal Opportunity. And Roger, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. You did a podcast about, I guess it was about a little less than a month ago now, about some actions that took place out here at Texas Tech and the Texas Tech Health Sciences Center and dealing with race in college admissions. First, tell folks about some of your work and then also what you're doing as far as race in college admissions.
Sure. Well, I appreciate that. Well, my organization, the Center for Equal Opportunity, you can read about on our website, which is ceousa.org. And our motto is E Pluribus Unum. Maybe you've heard of that. We think that Americans come in all different shapes and sizes and colors, and that's great. Everybody should be treated without regard to race or what country their ancestors came from, and that applies to old-fashioned discrimination, but it also applies to the new politically correct discrimination. We're against all that. So we spend a lot of our time fighting so-called affirmative action and racial preferences of all types, and that brings us to Texas Tech. And I'm a fan of Texas Tech, but we did get information that they were weighing race and ethnicity in deciding who gets admitted.
Right.
And we think that's wrong. So we filed a complaint, and eventually what made the news recently is that as a result of our complaint, the medical school entered into an agreement with the Trump administration that it would stop racial discrimination in its admissions, and that's a good thing. We applaud the Trump administration for making clear that it's not going to follow the Obama administration in turning a blind eye to politically correct discrimination. And we also applaud, Texas Tech for doing the right thing and ending the unfortunate policy it had of considering skin color and what country your ancestors came from in deciding who gets admitted.
Well, and Roger, let me ask you this, how will we know if Texas Tech actually follows through on this?
Well, there are a variety of things that you can look at. They have to report, periodically now to the Trump administration. They have to, cooperate with them for a period of time, answer any questions that they've got. You can tell one of the things that our organization does is look at admissions data, and we get the SAT scores and grades and that sort of thing, and you look to see if there's a difference between those kinds of academic credentials and who gets in, based on whether the student is white or black or Latino or Asian American. And of course, the same thing for medical schools. You look at MCAT scores and undergraduate grade point average and so forth. And if you start to see gaps between what it takes to get in if you're African American versus what it takes to get in if you're Asian American, then you've got evidence that there's a problem.
Yeah, we're visiting with Roger Clegg, President and General Counsel for the Center for Equal Opportunity here on the Chad Hasty Show. Roger, when I look at this, you hear all the universities say that the reason we do this, the reason why we do race in college admissions, University of Texas is the same argument that they use. We want diversity. We want to promote diversity. We have to have diversity. When I look at this, I think if you're qualified to get in, you're qualified to get in. And when you put in a college admission form, they shouldn't know your name. They shouldn't know your race. They shouldn't know where you're from. You should be like assigned a number, and you send that in, and that way the universities are just able to look at the information that's right in front of them, the academic and other information that they take, and allow in the people that qualify to get in. Is that something that's would be horrible to do?
No, I agree with you. I think that's the right approach. And look, there's nothing wrong with diversity, but the question is whether we ought to be engaging in discrimination,
right,
because that's what's going on, in order to achieve a politically correct racial and ethnic balance. And the answer to that question is no. That doesn't make sense as a matter of fairness, as a matter of policy, or as a matter of law, in my opinion. And we're fighting to put an end to that as a matter of policy, and we hope that with some of the appointments that President Trump has made, including to the Supreme Court, that eventually the Supreme Court will agree and put an end to this nonsense.
Yeah,
it's not fair.
How has this been allowed to continue? I mean, what under law have judges looked at and gone, yeah, this sounds good to me. You're able to discriminate because that's what it is. It's you're able to discriminate based on race. When doing race in college admissions. How has this been able to continue?
Well, that's a good question, and there is no good answer to it, except for the fact that judges have been willing to ignore the law in order to reach results that they like. And the Civil Rights Act of 1964 in particular is quite explicit in saying that, if you get federal money, which just about all colleges do, then you can't engage in racial and ethnic discrimination. But unfortunately, the Supreme Court said that, well, no, we're going to make an exception. And if you have a really good reason for it and no other way to achieve this really good end, then we're going to allow it. And they just made that up. Yeah. And that's bad enough. But then they accepted this diversity justification as a really good reason, as quote compelling, end quote. And it's not compelling. It's a very weak justification, and it doesn't justify something as ugly as racial discrimination with all of the costs that it has. And by the way, one of the costs is that not only is this unfair to, typically the white kids and the Asian American kids who get discriminated against, but you end up having severe mismatch for the African American and Latino kids who are admitted, and they end up not graduating or graduating with lower grades or dropping out or switching majors. It would have been much better, for everybody if students went to schools where their academic qualifications are on par with the rest of the student bodies. So this is really just a terrible policy. It's unfair. It's illogical, and it should be illegal. And here's hoping that before too long, the Supreme Court will hear a case that will give them the opportunity to reset and to tell schools that no, you can't engage in racial discrimination. And there are a couple of cases that are percolating along. One at Harvard and one at the University of North Carolina. And
I was just about to ask you that if there are any cases that are making their way, maybe slowly but surely making their way up to the court.
Well, that's another good question, and the answer is that we're expecting a decision by the trial judge in Boston in a case that was brought against Harvard by Asian American students who have been discriminated against, in the name of diversity. And that case, of course, whoever loses will take it to the Federal Court of Appeals, and then from there it goes on to the Supreme Court. So, in a couple of years, that case may be up there. The University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill has also been sued, so that's another possibility. And there are new justices up there. It's always been very closely decided whenever this issue gets up there. And, here's hoping that with, the new justices, we'll get a good decision out of the Supreme Court.
Sure. Visiting with Roger Clegg. Roger, how can people keep up with the work that y'all are doing?
Well, I think you mentioned two things in your very kind introduction. I'm, personally the general counsel at the Center for Equal Opportunity, and our website is ceousa.org. And our organization works with the Regulatory Transparency Project, which is part of the Federalist Society, and that's worth looking into as well. They have a good website. And I would be remiss if I didn't say that, the Center for Equal Opportunity is a 501c3 organization, and donations to it are fully tax deductible. So
very nice.
We'd love to get some support from your listeners.
Absolutely. Roger Clegg, appreciate your time today, and let's catch up in the future and see where some of these cases are going to.
Very good, and good luck to the Red Raiders. Hope they do well against Oklahoma State and make it to the College World Series.
Absolutely. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Okay. Bye-bye.
That's Roger Clegg, General Counsel for the Center for Equal Opportunity and President of the Center for Equal Opportunity. Chad Hasty Show, KFYO.